Were you ever one of those kids who always felt like your parents were forcing you to do something? Maybe your parents made you go to church, or they made you take piano lessons, or they made you learn Spanish, or whatever. It was something that was important to them, and they, in turn, wanted it to be important to you. Maybe for years, you did whatever it was begrudgingly. As a teenager, you'd kind of roll your eyes, but you did it anyway. And then suddenly, as an adult, one day, there is a light bulb moment where you realize that all those years of your parents encouraging you to do something all of a sudden becomes something that you care about, and it becomes something you want to do on your own. Suddenly, no one is forcing you. You're doing it because you want to. Welcome to Business with Purpose. I'm your host, Molly Stillman of Still Being Molly, and this show's all about bringing you the stories behind the brands, companies, and small businesses that are changing the world. Each week, I interview an entrepreneur, CEO, nonprofit director, community leader, or just an amazing person who is trying to make a positive impact not only through their personal life, but also with their professional career. My goal is to show you that no matter what you do for a living, you can make an impact right where you are. My guest this week is Jennifer Lunsford with Rahab's Rope, a nonprofit and jewelry brand that is giving hope to women and children who have been or are at risk of being exploited through human trafficking. As you know, this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart, so I was really excited to have Jennifer on the show. But before we dive in, I want to mention our podcast sponsor, and that is Cultivate What Matters. With an ever-growing list of to-dos, it is so easy to feel overwhelmed and dispassionate by the tasks on your plate, or disappointed you're not spending enough time doing the things you love and caring for the people you love. The ladies at Cultivate What Matters want you to press the reset button. They believe your time can be spent intentionally and that your to-do lists can be simplified by uncovering meaningful goals and taking action on them little by little. In doing this, we learn to celebrate progress, not perfection. Cultivate What Matters was created to give you the community, resources, and encouragement to realize that you can make great things happen, big or small. You can find out more at stillbeingmolly.com/cultivate, or you can go back to episode 37 of the podcast to hear my interview with my sweet friend, Lara Casey, who is the founder of Cultivate What Matters. Okay, now without further ado, on to my conversation with Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Hey, Molly. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you on. I feel like this is an interview that has been a long time in the making. We have been connected for quite some time now. And then I was like, I'd wanted to have you on the show, and then our schedules didn't match up, and we had a crazy summer. And so I'm just like, I'm so excited to finally be able to sit down and hear your story and hear all about Rahab's Rope.
I completely agree.
So we're going to just dive right in because there's just so many things that I want to ask you about. And so I'm going to have you do what all my guests do, and that's give us the Jennifer 101. So tell us your story and how you got involved with Rahab's Rope.
Oh, perfect. All right. So my name is Jennifer Lunsford, and I got involved with Rahab's Rope through my mother, who is the founder of Rahab's Rope. It's an interesting story, I guess, for me. This started years ago, and her kind of dragging me along, yes, on mission trips or selling product out of the back of her car. And I'd always been around missions, but I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to go to college and get my degree and get married and have children and all of that. And so that's exactly what I did. I graduated from Liberty University with a bachelor's degree in psychology and thought that that was the route I was going to take. I then married someone that I had known for many, many years. And now we have two sons, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And then when I decided I wanted to get my master's in psychology, I started my first semester. I decided to take Liberty's online classes for the beginning of this. So I had registered for my first semester there, was good to go. And during that time, I just felt like this was not what I was supposed to be doing. Something was off, and I kept telling my husband, I said, I just can't figure it out. I can't pinpoint what I'm supposed to do. Talked to my mother, and, I said, how is the business looking like? Do you see that there's a full-time position for me? And when I came to her, she said, I just had somebody resign, put in their 2-week notice today because they recently married, and she and her new husband were moving out of town. They were moving out of state. So she said, actually, yes, I do. So I just couldn't believe it. It was just, I mean, as always, God's timing is always best. I feel like he always puts us in those situations where we have to have more faith in him and depend on him and just always trust that our best interest is at his heart. So I called my husband and I said, Mom, said they do have a full-time position available, and she actually, is going to need me. They need more help because the business is starting to grow. So I got together with my parents, and yet again, I never thought that this is what I would be doing, is working with my parents, running a family business, combating human trafficking. I was always so involved in missions, not by choice, not that I, didn't want to have anything to do with it. It was just, I wanted to pave my own way in life. And so, all those years of my parents dragging me, overseas or to churches or wherever they took me, selling product out of the back of her car when she first started Rahab's Rope. I just got that whole time God was shaping me to do what he has called me to do.
I love that. Now, for those that are not familiar with Rahab's Rope, and we've alluded to it a little bit, but tell us a little bit about Rahab's Rope and how it got started and the mission of it and everything.
Yeah, sure. So my parents took a trip to India back in 2000 to visit some friends who had moved to India full-time to work with an orphanage in Goa, India. And I didn't go on that first trip. Just the two of my parents went, and they came back. And my mom, I guess she's traveled to probably around 17 countries or so. And she just really felt like she was being called to India. She didn't know doing what. She just knew that's where God was calling her. So she came back, and then 2 years later, fast forward 2 years later, she and my dad decided to plan another trip to India, this time to see what it would look like if she were to be involved in missions in India. Yet again, she didn't know what, and I went on that trip with them. And I was in high school at the time. So what I experienced there, I was not prepared for it. My parents told me about it, but, India is just a different world. It's a beautiful country, but it's just so different than what I was used to being in my comfort zone here in Georgia in the South.
Yeah.
So we went on that trip and met with an Indian pastor, and it's interesting because he had been praying that somebody, a woman would come to him because he wanted to do something helping these ladies in the red light area. But as a man, he can't just go in and, start working with these ladies. There's a trust factor there. There's just a lot to it. And he was looking for that female partner, and that partner was my mother. Yeah. And so it was, God was working on both of them at the same time, and then brought them together in 2002 when the three of us had taken that trip overseas. So then she quickly learned about the issue of trafficking in India. They still to this day operate, on a bribery system, which is, unfortunate, and that hinders things a little bit. But that's how the ball kind of got rolling, was meeting with this Indian pastor and learning about, the issue there. And she watched a YouTube video, and she said, the young girls that she watched, none of them said that they wanted a handout. They just wanted somebody to teach them a trade. They just wanted hope and opportunity. And so she thought, well, my dad's background is healthcare IT, so he's got the business background, and they didn't want to just fundraise. They wanted to teach these young girls and ladies a trade educate them, whatever the need was, so that they could go back into their community in a positive way. And while they were employed through Rahab's Rope, they, of course, would be earning a fair wage. And then if they want to go on to other things, that's our mission. It's not to employ them indefinitely, but to find out what they would like to do and help them reach that goal, and then see that they go out into the community and reach that goal.
Yeah. Well, there's one quick thing I want to kind of pause and just address a little bit, because it's a really important point that you brought up, is that the women that they were working with, they did not want a handout. And that is it's something that I feel like sometimes I have to remind myself, because I feel like, well, duh, everybody knows this. But then I realize, like, no, I just talk about it all the time. So of course I have to like stop myself and say, no, I can't assume everybody knows this. And then when I get out there and I start having conversations with people who don't work in this area, they just think that, you know, people in developing nations and women in India and things like that, women who have been caught in human trafficking, they just want somebody to swoop in and rescue them. And they just want, you know, charity, which is not what they want at all. They want to be rescued, but they want an opportunity. They want a chance to, in some case, you know, I don't know if I'm wording this correctly, but like rescue themselves. They want an opportunity to pull themselves out of a situation. And so it's not that they are lacking talent or they are lacking the wherewithal. It's that they are lacking, you know, whether it's the resources or the finances or the opportunity or the connections or the community, whatever it is, there's some type of rung of the wheel, so to speak, that is missing for them.
Yes, that is 100% correct. And a lot of people don't take the time, I guess, and it's not by any fault of theirs. You don't have an understanding for an issue so much here in the U.S., you know, as what the issue really is, I guess.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And so there was this opportunity and this partnership that you mentioned that your mom had with this Indian pastor. And so was it from that partnership that Rahab's Rope was born, or was it kind of after the fact? At what point did all of that kind of come to a head, so to speak?
Between 2002 and 2004. So there was a 2-year time period there where all of this kind of fell into place. It did form when we met with the Indian pastor and met some ladies in the community now this is in Bangalore. Mm-hmm. It all kind of formed then when we met the ladies that were familiar with the red light areas, and they had the resources to be able to help us help these women. Mm-hmm. They couldn't necessarily do it on their own. So it was like my mother was the missing piece. And then when she met this group, it took about a year and a half, 2 years for it to kind of come into fruition.
Yeah. Now, at what point, you know, I love that you were like, yeah, as a child and as a teenager, you were dragged on mission trips and stuff like that. I feel like, you know, whether it was mission trips or something like that, like we all have that story of our parents or somebody, you know, an older adult in our life, like forcing us to do something we didn't want to do. And later on, we're like, oh, I'm really glad that I did that, or whatever it is. At what point, you know, I know you had that conversation with your husband where you were saying like you really didn't feel like you were doing what you were supposed to be doing. And then all of a sudden this opportunity opens up for you to continue to help your parents grow this family business. I mean, I know you say family business, but I mean, this is a global business that is having global impact. So at what point was it no longer your mom and dad dragging you on a mission trip and all of a sudden like it clicked for you that this was where you were, you were made for such a time as this, like that you were created for this position in this time, and it clicked. Was there a moment like that for you, or a time?
I think it was when really during that first semester, grad school, and I just felt a sense of just being empty. Like, I know I have more purpose than, being a wife and, eventually a mother, that's a huge purpose and calling, but I felt just empty. Mm-hmm. And I traveled with my mother doing a few conferences a few months prior to that, setting up a booth, talking to people about Rahab's Rope and selling the products. But I think those last few conferences and then that kind of halfway between that first semester of grad school, just the way I felt, it was just, I don't know, it just dawned on me, and I was like, duh, this is what I've been this whole time. I didn't want to, do what my parents were doing. I wanted to pave my own way, but yet God was preparing me to be, kind of disappointed or, not fulfilled in what I was doing, but He was preparing me this whole time with my mom, taking me along with her to these different places. So I guess it was just during that first semester, I just kind of, I remember it was around or right before Easter. I remember getting on my knees on the floor praying for God to just show me what I was supposed to do, because I was tired, I was confused, and I just wanted to, I knew God had great things for me. I just needed to know what that was, and I just needed confirmation on what that was going to be, and He made that very clear.
Yeah, that's amazing. And don't you love it when that happens? It's just like, yes. It's such a freeing moment.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And so Rahab's Rope has grown so much over the years. Now, you guys are, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are a 501c3 nonprofit, but then you have sort of this component of working, kind of getting directly involved with the anti-human trafficking efforts while also selling products. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yes. And I was just like, that was my understanding, yes. But I was like, I don't want to say this and then completely mess it up. So could talk a little bit about just in general, this maybe sounds like a very basic question, but you know what I'm saying, is like the business model is. So what is the ultimate goal? Because you have this dual rung of the nonprofit side, like really focusing on fighting anti-human trafficking efforts, and then or fighting human trafficking efforts. And then on the other side, you've got the jewelry and accessories and home decor and things like that are also providing sustainable economic opportunity for people.
Yes. So we do have a lot of components to Rahab's Rope. We have a lot of different things going on, I guess. So we have our business model, of course, like I was saying, we want to teach these women a trade, but our goal isn't to employ them indefinitely. Some, of course, yes, they stay with us and we love it. We couldn't operate without them. So we have 5 women's centers in India. We first started in Bangalore. Then we expanded to Mumbai, Goa, New Delhi, and now we're up in far northeastern India in Manipur. So we have centers in India where we provide basic education and vocational training. We can house women. We rent flats. So the bottom level will be the vocational training where they make the products and their education. They work on math and English. And so in our centers, they make the sewing items a lot of the sewing items we sell, a lot of the jewelry, all of our jewelry that's natural stones and freshwater pearls, it comes from the ladies wear hands-on with in India.
That's awesome.
And then we do have a fair trade partner, faith-based fair trade partner. I guess 8 years now we've been partnered with them. And so they do a lot of our home decor items, our bags, and our throws. And they have a group. They do similar work, and they also employ a lot of men, which, of course, helps the issue. If you can keep men employed and off the streets, then hopefully the trafficking issue will decrease, somewhat. So they hand carve all of the wood products we have out of mango wood. They hand stitch a lot of things, the tote bags we have. But so we have our 2 stores that we sell the products in. So the ladies make the products. They're paid before the items are sold and shipped here. They're paid on a cycle. And so we ship the products to our warehouse in Gainesville, Georgia. And then we disperse between the 2 stores. And then we also travel to about 35, sometimes 40 conferences a year. Those conferences may be nursing conferences, educators, faith-based, wherever we see we would fit, and women would be interested in what we're doing and would want to learn more, and where they would purchase the products. So we set up a full 10 by 10 booth, sometimes larger, and we sell the products that our ladies are making at these conferences, and we get to share with them about Rahab's Rope. And we also look for women to take on missions trips with us. We take teams throughout the year, whether it be medical missions or just missions in general. So conferences are a great way for us to find potential team members to come along with us. We do sell wholesale to people. We have about 65 stores that we're in right now. And we also have an online catalog. And then we do host parties. So we do a little over 200 host parties a year. And it's the same as any in-home party where you have product and literature and people can order and purchase anything that comes in the kit that we send. So we have several ways of getting our products in front of people and getting the story of Rahab's Rope and educating people on the issue of human trafficking. And I will mention in the host parties, we do send a 5-minute DVD, and it's just touching base on global human trafficking stats along with specifics on Rahab's Rope.
I know you're loving this chat with Jennifer, and I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor of the show who's able to help make it possible, and that's Cultivate What Matters. This is something I talk about all the time, and that is pursuing our God-given dreams and goals. You want to be the person you were made to be, but your time, heart, and energy have been sucked dry by guilt, distractions, and not knowing where to go next. Enter the Power Sheets. I have personally been a Power Sheets user for over 3 years, and they have completely transformed how I set goals and grow both personally and professionally. This incredible 1-year intentional goal planner from Cultivate What Matters is ready to help you uncover intentional goals and live them out. It's absolutely for anyone, love-at-home moms, students, CEOs, entrepreneurs, women in any season of life who need a grace-filled system that works. Thousands of women all over the world have made their goals happen with the Power Sheets. It is your day planner's best friend. The Power Sheets are a proven process that works and includes 12 full months of goal-setting worksheets to help make your goals a reality. Are you ready to live on purpose? If you want to finally be the woman you were created to be, free of pressure and the need to be perfect, head over to stillbeingmolly.com/cultivate now to order your Power Sheets and explore their entire 2019 collection. Now, back to my chat with Jennifer. That's such an important thing that gets lost sometimes in the discussion, and that is the education component. And because I do work with anti-human trafficking groups here in North Carolina, and one of the big sectors that we work to educate are both medical, nurses and doctors, and teachers. And people always ask us why. And I'm just like, well, for one, I mean, this is domestically, and this stat is not that off from internationally as well. But domestically, 9 out of 10 human trafficking victims have been seen by a doctor while they were being trafficked. And so for a to be able to train nurses and doctors to identify signs that somebody might be being trafficked is so key, because think about it, a nurse or a doctor can very easily, shoo anybody else out of the room and be able to talk with a potential victim one-on-one and be able to figure out what's actually going on. Same with teachers. Like, teachers could be interacting with human trafficking victims on a regular basis and not necessarily know it unless they have the training. It is obviously a little bit different internationally, but I mean, having worked with human trafficking victims in Kenya, you know, a lot of them had been taken to a clinic of some kind at some point. And so being able to work with doctors and nurses in Kenya and explain to them the signs and be like, no, this is not somebody who is a prostitute. This is somebody who is being trafficked, and being able to help them identify the difference between that. That's so important. So I just wanted to kind of like highlight, because I think sometimes that little bit can get missed in the larger discussion.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Now, I want to talk about the name because and my husband edits the show, and I know, like, as soon as he sees that the name of the company is Rahab's Rope, he's going to be like, you love them, don't you? Because Rahab is arguably, after Jesus, of course, my favorite person in the Bible. And because I love the story of Rahab. And if you are listening and you are not a believer and you're not somebody who has spent a lot of time reading the Bible and you don't necessarily know the story of Rahab, we're just going to give you like the 36,000 foot view of the story of Rahab. So Rahab was a prostitute, although, you know, modern day Rahab, she was likely a human trafficking victim, but she was a prostitute in the city of Jericho, and the Israelites are supposed to be going in and conquering this city. And so Rahab goes in there. Two of the Israelite spies go in, and she catches them, but instead of turning them in to the people who are looking for the Israelite spies, she hides them. And so she hides them, and in return, they say that, you know, that Rahab and her family will be protected by God when the city of Jericho gets taken down, basically. And but the whole thing about the rope is, and do you want to explain the significance of the rope? Because I think it's just, it's so cool.
Well, yes. So I'll tell you this part. My mother was studying the book of Joshua at the time all of this was kind of coming to life. And she thought, well, if something does come of this sex trafficking organization, what in the world would I call it? And she was taking a class actually online, a biblical studies class online through Liberty University, and they were studying the book of Joshua, specifically Rahab. So she, again, as she was reading all about Rahab, she just loved the story. And she was saying, you know, it's to be said, you know, Rahab hid the spies under the bundles of flax. And so our little rope we have is I guess the studies say, you know, the rope came from that flax. If she had enough flax to hide the spies under, then she probably had enough flax to make the rope out of, to hang outside of her home as a symbolizing, you know, that she was safe. So during this process of thinking about what to name it, it was just literally like she just read that and she was like, this is what it's going to be, Rahab's rope.
Yeah. And it's just such a beautiful picture of the redemptive nature of the gospel. And like I said, I love to talk about it. And it's funny too, because I do BSF, Bible Study Fellowship, and we are actually studying the people of the Promised Land. And we just finished our study of Joshua. And so then we moved on to Ruth, and we're talking about Ruth and Boaz. And one of my favorite things about Boaz, which he is, you know, the kinsman redeemer, he is the redeemer of Ruth. And he's the son of Rahab. And I'm just like, man, this is so awesome, because, and then you keep going and you keep going, and guess who's in the genealogy of Jesus? Guess who we got? Boaz and Rahab. And it's just like, I get so excited talking about this, because it's such an amazing picture of what God created literally from the beginning, and his plan literally from the beginning to redeem all of us. And the answer like as I've been doing a lot of the studying and studying Joshua and really diving into the story of Rahab and just the redemptive nature of this story of taking someone who, by all intents and purposes, or for all intents and purposes, society just viewed her as trash. Society viewed her as broken and lost, and there was no hope for her, much like society views women or men who have suffered from being victims of human trafficking. Society views them as trash, as useless. And God literally can take that and redeem it for so much good. And it is incredible. It's incredible. And I mean, there's just that picture from the beginning is just, it's beautiful. And what God can take out of that ugly thing and then use it to save others and inspire others and rescue others. Like, nothing else can be done through that.
I know. It really is amazing just thinking about the whole picture of it.
Yeah. And so to use that, and that symbol of, Rahab's rope as the name of an amazing company that is working to rescue these beautiful people, I love it. And that's one of the things that drew me most to what you guys are doing, and really, in my eyes, like helps you guys kind of stand out in some ways, because it's just such a beautiful picture.
Well, we agree, and thank you. Well, I think it relates so well to the work we're doing. I mean, it couldn't be any more of a better fit. I mean, the name couldn't be, because, you're taking these women, these young girls who they've never been given a chance, and they're that something that's broken, and you're taking them and you're restoring them into something that's so beautiful that they never knew that they were. And so I just think that, as God's plan is always perfect, and, the timing of my mother studying Rahab just couldn't have been any more better than it was when all of this, was coming about. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Well, so what is on the horizon for Rahab's rope here at the end of the year and into the next year? Well, we're working on several things. We have a couple of opportunities with some larger faith-based retailers, which is very exciting. We've got a few things in the pipeline with that. And, I just think about when we talk to these specific retailers, it's just so interesting and empowering too, I should say, thinking about my mother 14 years ago selling products that she brought back from India out of the back of her car to whoever, would buy it, to now, being in 65 stores, having 2 stores of our own, and then even having the opportunity to talk to these larger retailers so that we can, of course, the more products we sell, the more ladies we can help, the more we can pay them. But it's just that many more people will be educated somewhat on human trafficking. Yes. Amen to that. Unfortunately, it is becoming such an issue here, stateside. But that's why we need, organizations like Rahab's Rope and others to, be on the forefront of all of this and all work together so that we can raise awareness and education to consumers. So we've got a couple of things with that. My parents will be traveling back to India in January, and we hope to expand our home decor line. They're going to be working on that, and I can't always travel because I do have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old at home, so Mom will just Skype me in all times of the night for their meeting, saying, what do you think about this? Yeah. So that's always a lot of fun. But I think the main thing for us that we foresee for 2019 is partnerships with similar organizations here stateside, because we are global. But like I, said, and like everyone knows, trafficking is becoming such a problem here, and it is such a problem here in the U.S. So I think that that's our main thing, is finding these other great organizations that to partner with here stateside, so that we can all work together to combat this whole issue.
I agree. And, just going back to kind of like what we said earlier, and it's just, and there are people that will disagree with me, and that's fine. You would be wrong. But, at the end of the day, like I've been in this work for 8 years now, and I by no means am an expert, but I've spent a lot of time talking with both, overcomers of human trafficking and people who work, in the different areas, both secular and in faith-based organizations. And I am just convinced that the only way we are going to end human trafficking in our lifetime is through the love of Jesus. Like, it's the only way, because there's just... Yes, we have to have all of these resources, but like when you really, really boil it down, and when you really get below the surface of, ending the demand, and what causes the demand, and what causes, everything from, global poverty and all these things, like the things that end up causing human trafficking and causing somebody to want to go and pay somebody for sex, like, the ultimate answer for breaking all of those chains is Jesus. Like, it's the only answer. And so I just love how you use both your faith and, the story of Rahab and things like that to inspire others, to lead them to the ultimate thing that is going to set them free. And so I just wanted to throw that in there, because it's...
Well, thank you. Yes. And, I think given our name is different, and it does come from the Bible. So that's always such a great kind of segue into, some people that come in our stores. Well, where did you get the name?
Yeah.
A lot of people know who Rahab is, but a lot of people do not.
Exactly.
And so it's great. One of our stores is in Northeast Georgia in Clarkesville. And so we have a lot of tourists that come through. And so we often get, well, where did you get the name? The name is interesting. It drew us into the store, but where did you get the name? So like you're saying, that name is such an easy way to start talking about.
Yeah. It's just beginning a conversation.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Yes.
And somebody then you never know like what that conversation might lead that person to do. Maybe they go home and they start to read more about the story of Rahab, or maybe they go home and they just start to learn more about the book of Joshua. And then that maybe, ultimately leads them into opening up a Bible they haven't opened up in 20 years. And you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you never know. You never know. So, gosh, I love that. Okay. I could talk about this all day. So we're going to transition a little bit to the get to know you portion, where we just ask some fun questions. And also, this is the portion of the show, as my listeners know, where my amazing and talented husband inserts a sound effect of his choosing to transition us to said get to know you round.
Well, Mr. Griffin, let's take a look at your physical results. Ah! There's a spider in here. Now, here we go. Mr. Griffin, you're going to expire in a month. This is your driver's license, isn't it? Now, unfortunately, I'm afraid you're going to die. When you watch these Dean Martin celebrity roasts.
Will you just tell us how Peter's health is?
Mr. Griffin, I'm not quite sure how to say this. Kim Basinger? Basinger? But now, on to the cancer.
Oh, my God.
You are a Cancer, right? You were born in July? Now, on to these test results. My, they're much worse than I thought. My son got a D- on his history test. Now, Mr. Griffin, that liver's got to come out.
What?
It's been in the microwave for 3 minutes. It'll get dry.
Okay, so question number 1 is, if we were to hook up your recently played playlist on whether it's like Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, or whatever, what would we hear?
Oh, my goodness. You would hear Kid Bops.
Yes. Hashtag mom of young kids.
Kid Bops or something like
Kids
that.
Bop.
Something along those lines.
Oh, yes. Kids Bop. I am very much familiar with Kids Bop.
Yes. And country music.
I like it. Do you have a particular artist you're a fan of?
Well, George Strait, really.
Oh, you can't go wrong with George Strait. I like it.
No, you can't.
Gotta love a man who stands there at a microphone not playing a guitar. Love it.
It's just the oldies. I love it.
I love it. That's awesome. Number 2 is, what is the one beauty or like beauty product you just can't live without?
I have a newfound love in skincare. It's called Our Skin Cares.
Ooh, I have not heard of this.
You'll have to look it up. We're actually going to start carrying it in our stores. But it's an anti-aging serum, and I've been using it for about a month and a half now, and I love it. I put it on in the morning and at night, and my skin is more hydrated than it has ever been.
Ooh, okay.
And they donate a portion of their sales to Food for the Poor.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm definitely looking this up because I have not heard of them, and that sounds like something that is right up my alley.
Yes.
Okay, question number 3 is, what is your guilty pleasure?
Dark chocolate.
Oh.
Once I start, I cannot stop.
It's like Pringles, but not. Once you pop, you can't stop.
Or like Wheat Thins. You just keep going back in the bag or the box.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, the calories aren't so bad. And then you realize the serving size is like 3 crackers.
Yes.
And then, half a box later, you're like, I think I've had too many servings.
Well, and I always have it in my head that dark chocolate is healthy.
Exactly. It's good for your heart. I think like cardiologists are like, you should have dark chocolate and wine. So,
yes,
obviously.
exactly.
It's for my heart, sir.
That's right.
Okay. And then my last question is, what are you most grateful for today?
My mother, 100%. Just the example that, she's always been for me through everything. And just, I think how, one tiny 5-foot-tall lady who was a stay-at-home mom could listen to, God's calling and 14 years later, look what has happened.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that example.
That's amazing. And Jennifer, you are incredible, and you clearly take after your mom in so many ways. And I just love to hear your heart and your passion for this, in addition to what you guys are doing to rescue those who are still enslaved. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time, and it finally worked out.
Yes. I was so inspired hearing the story of Rahab's rope, and I loved chatting with Jennifer. I loved hearing all about what they are doing to fight human trafficking. As always, I will have their details in the show notes. Another huge thank you to this week's podcast sponsor, Cultivate What Matters. Don't forget to go to stillbeingmolly.com/cultivate to take the first step of getting your life back and cultivating what matters in 2019. Thank you as always for listening to this week's episode. If you're a first-time listener of the show, welcome. Be sure you go back to the archives for past shows featuring so many incredible entrepreneurs and business owners who are literally changing the world with their businesses. And if you're a regular listener of the show, thank you for tuning in and week out, and thank you for your support. Be sure to head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast, Radio Public, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you're subscribed to the show. Clicking that subscribe button helps to make sure you never miss a new episode. And while you're there, would you mind taking a moment to leave a review of the show? Leaving a review really helps me to know what you're liking and how the show is personally impacting you. And if you share the show on social media, be sure to use the hashtag Business with Purpose Podcast, or tag me at StillBeingMolly on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. This show is edited by my amazing husband and executive producer, John Stillman, and the music is by Mark Killian of Third Wheel Media. Thank you so much for listening. Now go do something good with purpose on purpose.